In the spring of 1937, the largest object ever to fly appeared in the sky over New York City. 804 feet of silver, almost the length of the Titanic, floating, silent, 1,000 feet above the streets. People stopped and pointed. This was the Hindenburg, and for a few short years, it was quite simply the future, the most glamorous way to travel that human beings had ever built. It flew between Frankfurt, Germany, and a naval air station at Lakehurst, New Jersey. 3,500 miles of open Atlantic, crossed in about 60 hours, while an ocean liner took the better part of a week. A one-way ticket cost $400, as much as a new car. For the wealthy of the 1930s, this was the only way to fly across an ocean. And it was extraordinary. Inside were private cabins with running water, a dining room laid with fine china and fresh flowers, and a reading room where you could write a postcard at 1,200 feet. There was a lounge with a grand piano, built of aluminum to save weight. There were promenade decks with windows that tilted open in flight, so passengers could lean out and watch the world drift silently past below. There was even a smoking room, the only place aboard you were allowed a flame, sealed behind an airlock and pressurized so that no gas could ever get in, because the entire ship was floating on something that must never meet a spark. The Hindenburg was designed to be lifted by helium, a gas that simply cannot burn. But there was a problem. In 1937, only one country on Earth produced helium in quantity, the United States, and America had banned the sale of it to Nazi Germany. So the Germans had no choice. They filled the ship with the only lifting gas they had left, 7 million cubic feet of hydrogen. Lighter than helium, cheaper than helium, and one of the most flammable substances known to science. The designers knew exactly what they were sitting on. They wove the crew's uniforms from anti-static cloth. They fitted the passengers' shoes with special soles. They took every match at the door, and for a year, it was enough. Through 1936, the Hindenburg crossed the Atlantic 17 times without a scratch. It flew over the Berlin Olympics. It carried film stars and millionaires. It was a flying symbol of German power. And the Hindenburg was not alone. Its older sister ship, the Graf Zeppelin, had already flown more than 1 million miles. It had even circled the entire globe, without ever harming a single soul. Every reason in the world said the airship was safe, which is why, on the evening of May 6, 1937, no one on the ground was afraid. The Hindenburg was simply arriving at Lakehurst to finish the first crossing of a brand new season. It was already late. Thunderstorms had rolled across New Jersey that afternoon, and the captain, Max Pruss, was forced to wait, steering the great ship in slow circles along the coast for hours, waiting for the sky to clear. By 7 o'clock, the storms had passed, and Pruss turned for the field. To make up time, he brought the ship in fast and swung it through 2 tight turns so sharp that some believe they strained a bracing wire deep inside the hull. A little after 7, the Hindenburg eased up to the mooring mast, 200 feet over the ground. Below, a Navy ground crew reached for the ropes. Spectators waved. Newsreel cameras rolled. On the radio, an announcer named Herbert Morrison was recording a calm, almost bored description of the landing, to be played back later in Chicago. "It's practically standing still now," he said. "They've dropped ropes out of the nose." And then, at 25 minutes past 7, high on the tail, a witness saw a small flutter of blue flame, no bigger than a man. From that first flame to the ground took 32 seconds. 32 seconds to undo the greatest airship ever built. The fire did not spread. It exploded. 7 million cubic feet of hydrogen ignited cell by cell, and the entire stern of the Hindenburg became a mountain of flame that lit the evening sky for miles. The tail crashed to the earth, the nose reared upward, a chimney of fire roaring out of the front of the ship, and then slowly, impossibly, the whole burning giant began to sink toward the crowd. In the radio booth, Herbert Morrison's voice fell apart. "It's burst into flames," he screamed. "Oh, the humanity and all the passengers. It is the most famous broadcast in the history of radio." And you can hear the exact moment his heart breaks. People on the ground ran for their lives as the sky itself seemed to fall. And on the field, the ground crew did something extraordinary. Instead of running, many of them ran toward the fire. Because here is what almost no one expects from footage this terrible. Of the 97 people aboard the Hindenburg, 62 survived. As the gondola sank the last 100 feet, passengers kicked out the slanted windows and leapt, some from 60 feet in the air, and sprinted across the sand as burning fabric fell around them. The ground crew dragged them out by the arms. A 14-year-old cabin boy named Werner Franz was standing in the ship's belly when a water tank above him burst, soaking him head to toe. The water shielded him from the flames long enough to run. He walked away without a scratch. 35 of the people aboard died, along with one man on the ground. 36 lives, gone in just over half a minute. And yet, against every expectation, most of the people on that airship lived. Among the dead were seasoned officers, a young crewman on his first flight, and passengers who had crossed the ocean a dozen times before. Captain Max Pruss was pulled from the fire, so badly burned that rescuers scarcely knew him. He survived, but he would never command an airship again. So what caused it? For nearly 90 years, engineers have argued, but the leading theory is chillingly simple. The thunderstorm had left the ship's skin, crackling with static electricity. As the wet mooring ropes touched the ground, they grounded the metal frame, but not the outer skin. The difference sparked, and somewhere in the stern, hydrogen was already leaking into the air. That was all it took. The disaster killed the airship overnight. Within months, every hydrogen passenger ship in the world was grounded, and they never carried passengers again. The cruelest twist came later. After the fire, the United States finally agreed to sell Germany its helium. But the world had seen the newsreels. No one wanted to float across an ocean on a bomb anymore. And that is what set the Hindenburg apart from every disaster before it. 4 newsreel companies had come to film a routine landing. Instead, they caught the first great catastrophe of the modern age in full motion. And within days, audiences in darkened theaters around the world sat and watched it burn. The Hindenburg was built to prove the future belonged to the airship. Instead, on a single spring evening in New Jersey, it became the disaster that ended them. The first catastrophe in history, captured from the first spark to the last ember, on film for the whole world to see.